We have a quorum. Our first order of business is the approval of virtual councilmember participation. We don't have anybody. I saw Councilmember Harris. She's in the building, so we'll add her to the roll when she enters the room. Our next order of business is approval of the minutes of the Administration Public Works Committee meeting of May 12th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All right, moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Or we just do a voice vote. Everyone approve the minutes, right?
Aye.
Yeah. All right, any
Aye.
objections? Please add Councilmember Harris to the roll. All right, on a voice vote of 5-0, the minutes are approved. Our next order of business is public comment. I know we've got Dan Joseph. We also have two other commenters, so Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, members of the committee. I am Dan Joseph of 1510 Greenwood, lived in Evanston since 1973, and my mortgage is paid up. I've come to add my support for the resolution for the application for the grant improvements of Sheridan Road around Calvary Cemetery. Up to about 1930, Sheridan Road was 2 lanes, and actually, I can't confirm it, but probably had a promenade also along the lakefront there. Once Sheridan was widened to 4 lanes, we lost Calvary Beach, which was not very important because that area became part of the city of Chicago between Howard and Evanston and Juneway, but we also lost the promenade. Now, the walkway along the east side, and the only walkway on that stretch, is only 50 inches, and I'm going to pass out some of the obstacles one finds trying to walk where 2 people cannot pass each other, and bicycles have to dismount. So you can pass. I only got 3 copies, and you can just pass them out and look at, if I may. This is with two people walking. There's not even room for 2 people.
No problem.
And a nice warning sign about bicycles. Basically, get off, and I only have 2 on each side, so you don't hit a pedestrian. And here's how the path looks: sand and dirt. And here's one of the mini, I don't have one of these, the guardrails disappearing. So just more encouragement to you to proceed. Also, the idea of a road diet on Sheridan, which I have observed, even though there's 2 lanes each way, cars follow each other. They don't use both lanes, and there's very little traffic. So I don't think we're getting much congestion by reducing it to 1 lane each way, and I hope you folks consider that, and with that, be able to restore a promenade. It's a nice area to walk and a view of the lake. Thank you for letting me speak. I like going to committee meetings because they're much less informal, and I can go home and go to sleep early. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. I appreciate it. Our next speaker is Brian McCarris. He's online. Mr. McCarris?
Yes, Ed, can you hear me? I'm not sure if this is working here.
Loud and clear.
Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you all for a few moments of public comment. And I, like Dan, I am a longtime Evanston resident. In fact, I recently celebrated my 70th year since my birth here as a resident of Evanston. And I live in the 9th Ward on Oakton Street, grew up over closer to Lincoln School. I'm concerned today about item A4 in the council agenda packet concerning Beck Park and the more than $3.6 million contract to expand and develop a park that the city doesn't even own and rents, and it's not clear for how much longer, from the Metropolitan Sanitary District. And I'm particularly troubled by what seems to be the excessive cost of a $500,000 pavilion that is nothing more than an empty shell with a little bit of electricity and some fancy stonework and concrete work around it for the pad. I recently built a house, acquired the property, 1.5 acres, built a house on a small lake in Wisconsin for less than all of that. So the cost of just the pavilion alone was a little bit alarming to me. And while I'm on a roll here with your attention for civic projects, I am hoping that we can revisit the Civic Center as a possibility for a solution to the meetings. And given the inadequacies of 909 Davis for civic engagement, meetings, and gatherings, the 2100 Ridge was such a wonderful place to conduct meetings, and Dan, Joseph, and I used to go there regularly every month for meetings for what was then Citizens for Greener Evanston. I don't see any reason why this should be taken off of consideration for just another possible solution as a civic center as we move forward over time to discuss and arrive at a solution that the whole community supports. And my last item today is something I'm not sure that your members of this committee are aware of, but the water intake project is wrapping up. I'm sure some of you are aware of, but I'm not sure this committee is aware that another Lake Michigan community, which is Sheboygan, Wisconsin, with similar lake conditions, just further north, about 120 miles north of here, is just wrapping up their 6,500 linear foot, 60-inch concrete pipe, same dimension of everything we're using. They have a $10 million pump house and 1,000 more feet, and they're paying about $15 million less for this project. And when I contacted the project manager there, who advises me that the pump house is worth about just over 10 million, and that makes it about $10,000 per linear foot for the Evanston water pipe and just under $5,000 a linear foot for the pipe being delivered in Sheboygan. And I'm wondering if there can be some kind of oversight to discover where these added costs are by this committee. Otherwise, I'm grateful for your attention today, and I turn the microphone back over to the rest of the community. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
And your hard work in the community.
Our next speaker is Tricia Conley. Is Tricia Conley present in the Zoom?
I am. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to speak about a couple items before you tonight. The first one is A6. Lots of concern about, again, the repeated concern that many in the community make are these incredible amounts of money for consultants. And I feel like, it's been brought up so much, but yet we don't change anything about it, or we don't look at, how could we do some of this differently? When we're looking to spend $248,000 for community engagement and visioning for Emerson and Jackson, that just really unsettles me. And I think a lot of people are unsettled about that. It tells me that, we don't think we have city staff that are capable of a process to interact with our community. And, it also personally makes me feel like, is this simply a way to provide cover for the city to do what they want to do in the end and just wash their hands? Well, we did, we had a consultant come in and this is what they found out. It just doesn't sit well. And I really hope that all of you can dig deeper with staff and say, what would it look like if you ran a visioning and a community engagement meeting. Heck, if they need help, go over to District 65, where I was an educator for many years. And, we're doing community engagement all the time. Here's what you do. You don't need $248,000 to spend. You make sure there's dinner available in the evenings. You make sure there's childcare, and you make sure that people's information they're sharing with you, it means something. That will be something to make Emerson Jackson the best it can be. So that's one thing. The other one I'm speaking about is A11. Lots of concerns about this transaction that the Housing Authority of Cook County wants to do to sever their partnership with this other entity and take over that project alone. I've done some research around HAC. I've been in some of the buildings, spoken with some of the tenants. There's a couple of things here that are problematic with HACC. One is their financial stability. I can't find anywhere their latest report on their finances. Something was supposed to be released in February. I can't find it anywhere. It says on their own website that they were looking forward to having that information as of February of this year. In addition, again, they have had problems, most recently as January, in one of their buildings in Niles with property oversight and taking care of managing the building. So we should be concerned about that. If we really want to stand for our residents in Evanston, all of them, rich, poor, in between, we need to roll up our sleeves and make sure that this is going to be a project that we can be proud of. In addition to that, we had other people RFP for this and they were denied. And I think it would be good to take a look. Hey, can we maybe work with REBA to work with HACC and have a partnership going forward? Again, it really revolves around the financials that have to be determined before you okay this change. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. I think that's the end of anybody looking to speak in person or remotely.
Tom, I had sent in, I thought online, this is Mary Rosinski, to speak at this meeting. The link was not working, and I had to go in through City Council.
Okay. Mary, why don't you go ahead?
I appreciate it. Thank you. I also have a couple concerns, so I won't repeat what everyone else said, which I 100% agree with. Regarding A4, I'm hoping you will ask, what are the next phases and what do they cost? And that amount for the pavilion is crazy. I think we all know friends who built houses up and down the shore and have gotten 4-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom baths, beautiful kitchens, basements for less than that. Built it themselves, other than the land, which is what we'd be doing. So this number is really crazy. So if that's how much they would be charging for a pavilion, it makes me wonder what other charges in that are somewhat inflated. So I hope you would ask more questions on that, but definitely stay away from the pavilion and please find out what the next phases are. I couldn't find it on the website. Second of all, the A6 and the $250,000, I really encourage that we develop a viable, affordable housing program, policy program for when we buy property, because it seems like we're in the middle of Envision 2045, which is a front, they say, for getting affordable housing, yet we buy properties in the name of affordable housing, and then we don't have a plan for what to do with it. And we just wasted $700,000 with a consultant on Envision who didn't know what they were doing. We don't need to spend $250,000 to find out what to do with about, I think, less than an acre of property. And we should probably be looking at land banking. So I would suggest tabling that also. And I'll tell you, partly because of public notification. I was trying all day to get the proposal that was supposed to be on the website for the person who they want to award it to, and the link was broken, and then there was supposed to be an attachment. I've been communicating with Luke and Carolyn about getting it up. I think they finally got it up maybe a half hour ago. So I think just if for no other reason than the sake of transparency, no decision should be put on this today. And then as far as the 801 Main Street, that whole issue is really concerning to me as a taxpayer and as a realtor, because it looks, when I look at it, it looks like we, the city, are entering into something that is sort of a speculative development situation. We don't need to buy that property. Why don't we let the market conditions determine that? And then I know that in the summary, they included the parking lot, and then they're talking about other people's buildings, and it brings up questions of, are someone having conversations? Are we aggregating a big parcel there for somebody? And again, going back to what is our affordable housing? And there's the weirdest statement in there is that something about there may be potential for naturally occurring affordable housing. And I would like to have someone explain what that means, because naturally occurring affordable housing is usually like your affordable housing that's in your community now, that is happening without any subsidies or anything from the city or state or federal. And it's just like landlords like myself who tend to rent it somewhere closer to $1.80, $2 a square foot versus new construction, which tends to rent at $3 to $3.50 a square foot. So that whole thing is very confusing. So if you feel confused, you have every right to be, because it makes no sense. So I would hope those three things you would not pass on, and you would do the city well to discuss that more. I know there's a lot on it. You guys have a lot on your plate, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mary. Is there anybody else, or are we done with public comment? All right. That brings us to the consent calendar. I would like to remove A2, A12, A4, and A6. Does anybody else have an item that they would like removed? A2, A12, A4, and A6.
A11.
A11, okay. Anybody else? All right. Do I have a motion to move the consent calendar minus A2, A12, A4, A6, and A11?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
All right, on a 5-0 vote, the consent calendar minus A2, A12, A4, and A6, and A11 passes. Let's start with A2, approval of BMO Harris Amazon credit card activity. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move item A2, approval of the BMO Harris credit card activity in the amount of $36,769.56.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion? All right, let's do a roll call on that one, please.
Councilmember Suffredin.
I abstain.
Councilmember Davis.
Sorry, are we voting for action? I thought there was going to be discussion. Why did we pull it and then we're voting on it?
What's that? Oh.
Why are we pulling it and then voting on
I
it?
abstain from
Okay.
that one.
So he pulled it to abstain.
Oh, okay. All right. Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
On a vote of 4-0 with one abstention, the Amazon BMO Harris credit card activity passes. That brings us to item A12. Or wait, no. Let's do it in order. Yeah, A4. Approval of the contract with John Kemp and Company for the Beck Park expansion Phase 1 project bid. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move approval of the contract with John Keno and Company for the Beck Park expansion Phase 1.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address the cost of this pavilion and see what options we might have. $454,000 is what we would save by not doing the pavilion. That $454,000 is less than the consultant's estimate of $527,000. Either number is quite high for essentially a roof with no walls. I want to acknowledge that having a pavilion in the park is super important, and I understand that the proposal that is now in front of us comes to us as a result of significant public engagement. And so my concern is there a way to accommodate the need for a pavilion in a way that's much more cost effective? Also keeping in mind that we have state grant money that we're using for this purpose. And if we change anything at this point, do we risk losing that grant money? So a bunch of questions, opening the floor to commentary from staff.
Thank you. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm city engineer for the city of Evanston. So we did have a substantial amount of public engagement, and there were a number of comments and community discussion that drove the pavilion to be located in the center of the park. That has somewhat driven up the cost because it is the electrical has to come from fairly far away in order to accommodate that. And the pavilion is really intended to be an anchor to the park, so the aesthetic has been increased because of that and based on the community feedback that was received. What is in the contract at this point can be deducted from the contract for a savings of $454,000. We cannot really change it at the moment. We can just award it or not award it. We can look at changing it after the contract award via change order if we want to keep it in the contract, but maybe change some of the aesthetic features. I'm not sure we would get the full savings at that point once you're under contract. If we remove it, when we applied for the $1 million DCEO grant, we listed that item as $300,000, so we do risk losing the $300,000 portion. We're not really able to tell that at this point in time. It would take longer to get an answer from DCEO on whether or not we would lose that $300,000 than we have in the amount of time to award the bid, which has to be awarded in June in order to maintain the bid. Could we do a pavilion easier and cheaper as a separate contract? The answer is maybe. You could potentially have what is essentially a lower cost pavilion, but if it's done as a separate contract, the contractor would add on costs for mobilization and to get equipment out there, which may drive up the price of the pavilion. And so it's not clear how much would be saved even if you built a less expensive pavilion as a separate contract. So the options are to not build it at all, not build it and try to develop a separate contract for a pavilion that's less expensive, which may or may not save you money, particularly once you consider that you may lose the $300,000 in grant costs, which would not be eligible as a separate contract, or to award it as is and keep it, or award it and then try to change it later. It's not clear how much you would save.
Are there any obvious ways where cost could be taken out of this design? I'm getting to the limestone, leading question, and I'm hoping you answer the limestone.
Yes, but the limestone was built as part of the pavilion, so we would have to award the contract
Right.
and then work to value engineer, which is definitely feasible. I'm not sure how much we would save. I did talk with the consultant today about that, and she indicated that, yes, she felt like there would be potential design choices they could do an after design. It just, a lot would depend on the contractor working with us at that point.
If we punted, which was I figure option 2, took it out of this contract but did an RFP later on, we'd risk losing $300,000 of state funding.
Yes.
And we don't know what that risk is, but better safe than sorry, we should assume we would lose $300,000.
Yes.
And we don't know exactly how much we'll save by rebidding it.
We do not. If you were to rebid the same option as it is currently designed, you would likely not save any money. You would probably increase the price. The only savings would come from redesigning the pavilion into something that is a little bit more modest, but that comes with, you just don't know how much you will save by the time they add on mobilization.
Yeah, so where my mind is heading is towards something more modest, more reasonably priced. But it seems like, given where we're at, the most prudent course of action would be to approve the contract with the pavilion included and then take some money out of it afterwards. We would not risk losing $300,000 of state funding.
You would not.
We might not take as much cost out of it as we theoretically could if we rebid it. But who knows what's happening with inflation, and if it's a different contractor paying separate mobilization costs, that might eat up the savings anyway.
Yes.
So I'll, defer to the rest of the members of this committee to see what they have to say, but that's where my mind is at the moment. And I also want to acknowledge this park is in the 5th Ward, and Councilmember Burns, if you want to speak to the public engagement at all, I'd offer you that opportunity.
I'm sorry, I spaced out for a second. It depends. So where are you at? What do you think?
The pavilion is a result of extensive public engagement. And so, and you were there at most, if not all, of these public engagement sessions. How did we end up with the Cadillac of pavilions?
I think the only thing I can think of, and I was thinking about this earlier today, is maybe the size. Is it larger than the other pavilions at Butler or Twiggs?
I am not certain.
Okay.
It's about 1,000 square feet.
It looks like it's larger, and if it is, this particular neighborhood is very active. It probably has one of the oldest neighborhood/block clubs in the city, and so this is a location where they do a lot of events, their annual, block party and other events. And so maybe they imagine a pavilion that could fit a lot more people under it. But that would only be the case if it's larger. I can't remember. But from the look of it, it seems like it's a little larger than the other pavilions we have in around the city. But other than that, I'm not sure. But it did come out of a very extensive community engagement process over several months, at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 meetings. And I think what's important to me is we all know this, that the pavilions are one of the most heavily utilized things that we offer in Evanston. They're reserved for different events. People program them in the way that they see fit. It's not only meant for younger people, which, playgrounds are more suited to young folks. It's everybody ends up using it. And so if there is something that I think serves the whole community, it would be a pavilion. So it's certainly an improvement that I would like to see in the park. Now, whether or not it needs to be limestone and all these other things, I think is up to this body to consider that.
Yeah. All right. So just before I wrap up, if the $300,000 in state funding were not at risk, I would vote for excluding the pavilion from this bid. But since it is at risk, I suggest we include it and then take some money out of it to the extent possible. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Kelly, then Councilmember Davis, but let me just jump in with a question since we're talking about the pavilion size. The cost of pavilion, electric will cost whatever it is no matter what the size is. The limestone can be deleted. are there cost savings on a smaller pavilion? Or, I mean, electrical costs the same no matter what the size of the pavilion is.
It will be difficult, once we award it, to radically change the size of the pavilion, just because the park has a construction schedule, and usually these pavilions are worked out with the manufacturer, and they take a certain amount of lead time back and forth.
Okay.
So we can look at that, but it may cause some delays to pushing the project into the following year.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Kelly and then Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. So I think we all want to see a pavilion there, but we have, I guess I'd like to know what we would get for $300,000 in terms of a pavilion, but it sounds like we can't really get to that tonight, to understand what would $300,000 give us for a pavilion. Because
No, I don't know that I can tell you that tonight, because we can work with the contractor to reduce this, make the pavilion more modest. We can look at different materials, although if we do a substantial redesign, not just the limestone material, but other features of the pavilion as well, it may really push the schedule of the project while we go back and forth with pavilion manufacturers. But I would not be able to know what that exact cost is.
Okay, so this, I'm sorry, this line item cost for the pavilion is part of the whole Keno contract?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, so I guess I have a question too, and I had a question I asked earlier about just trying to understand what we could do or could have done, or why we aren't doing more in-house here. I think that would just help a little bit to understand. I mean, even this and electrical work, I'm just wondering, it seems like a lot of this, our in-house staff have the capabilities of doing much of the landscaping. So and including even the work on a pavilion. So I guess I'd like a better understanding as to what the issues are, or what, I think you mentioned that there was some specialty landscaping involved. So the pavilion, the specialty landscaping, special equipment that's needed, what's super special about this project that we can't do it in-house?
This project is a massive rework of Beck Park, and will involve most likely hundreds or thousands of hours of 1 to 2 crews working on this project, involving some fairly extensive equipment. And again, I'm not a contractor, so I can't tell you exactly what equipment they're going to have out there, but our Public Works Department, our crews already have full-time jobs. And so unless we were going to have additional workers, full-time, multiple crews of them to do this type of work and hire all the equipment, like purchase the equipment that those crews would be using, we would not be able to just absorb a contract like this.
Right. So I guess my question is, so it sounds like more than specialty, like being some really specialized work, it's just that our departments, our greenways or whoever be doing it is not big enough. And our parks need a lot of work across the board, not just this one park, and we're talking about just phase 1 at $3.6 million. And I would like to hear a little bit more about what the other phases are and the projected costs. But it does beg the question, not maybe for this one right now, but if we're spending this, and much of this could be done, we have the capabilities, the knowledge, the skills in-house, if we do need to, in fact, look at expanding our greenways department or whatever departments would be involved in this sort of a project. Because it sounds like we're just talking about, we're talking about manpower, and we don't have enough of it, even though we still have a lot more work, not just Beck Park. Is that right?
Yes, we have a number of parks even right now that are in design. So that next year we'll have
We'll be outsourcing a lot more. So it seems to me for the cost of outsourcing, we really should take a hard look at expanding our staffing, our in-house staffing. I think in the end, it would probably be a cost-efficient move to make. Because we have this and, like you say, a lot more coming down the pike. So I just really want us to consider that going forward. This is expensive. And could you explain a little bit about the other phases, since the public did ask? This is phase 1, and what are involved in the other phases and projected costs?
I will have to look up what the projected costs are. Phase 2 is a water feature for children to, not a splash pad necessarily, but more like a meandering creek, artificial creek water feature that children could play in. That would be located at the south end of the park, and then some additional pathway and drainage work to improve other areas of the park and their utility. And then the third phase is actually, there were a lot of requests and comments made about the difficulty of crossing Emerson at the north end of the park to get from North Evanston to the park. And so the third phase is to look at actually that crossing and considering potentially an underbridge or some other signalized crossing to allow for safer access from the north end.
Thank you. So water and then the crossing, those are and then do we bid out those next two phases?
Those two phases are not designed. I honestly would recommend looking at the Emerson Crossing project, not necessarily as a park project, but more looking at it as an act of transportation to encourage pedestrian and bicyclists. And that sort of changes it and puts it into a different type of grant application. If our federal government had not been changing its priorities, I would say it's probably a very good grant opportunity, but that kind of remains to be seen. The water feature is definitely not designed, but is something that we would be moving into potentially working on the design as either the 2026 or 2027 budget for future construction.
Great, thank you. And I know we communicated through email about this, but I just, I feel like when we're at a moment where we really have to look for efficiencies, and this is discretionary, I want to do it. I support doing renovating the park. I'm just concerned that with the lump sum bid where we can't see a breakdown, and I know we discussed this, it's difficult for us to say, well, maybe we could save here. We did get a breakdown on the pavilion only. But do we have a policy? Do we have a policy regarding lump sum versus line item bids? Like, do we say, like, when do we accept just lump sums where we don't see the line items? I mean, is there a policy or a definition that we have regarding lump sum, or I think it was another term, not the unit pricing or line item?
Yeah, so it's not so much a policy as the industry that we're working in sort of dictates how contracts are set up. So transportation projects, utility projects where you're really constrained and the type of construction is pretty repetitive, those tend to be unit price projects. When we look at something like a park or a facility, there's a lot of pieces and a lot of moving parts that go into building a playground even. And so the industry, it's not the city of Evanston that is making a hard choice. The industry basically works on these fixed price lump sum contracts in which they agree to do everything to provide the product that you have specified and detailed in your contract documents, and you do not get that involved in the very specific particulars of how they construct it. You just look at the finished product, and is the finished product meeting your requirements?
Thank you. So, but we could, I know some cities do, like for certain projects say, it has to be a unit pricing or line item to be able, so you can make decisions about where you might want to cut back. So I feel like that would be nice to see that as a policy so that we're clear on that. But I think that's it for now. Thank you. But I am concerned that we don't just stay within the 300 for the pavilion and figure that piece out. And again, the overall cost and the projected costs coming down the pike as we look at our many parks that need attention. So thank you very much.
All right, Councilmember Davis and then Councilmember Harris.
I was just wondering, based on your experience with similar sized parks, in Evanston, what have we spent on similar park
This is a
projects?
much larger park improvement than we typically do. So it is within what we would expect to pay for a park improvement of this size. It's just that we typically don't do park improvements that involve new pavilions. It's actually 3 complete playground spaces, as well as a variety of path work and drainage improvements.
Can you give me if you have the number off the top of your head, how much did we spend on Independence Park?
I will have to look. My apologies.
Okay, no problem. And so basically the estimate we're seeing now does not include phase 2 or phase 3.
It does not.
Do we have to do I guess like we don't ever have to do anything, but like I guess my question is, would the park feel incomplete without phase 2 and 3, as if it's like missing something?
This park has a fairly complex history. There was a pumping station that was built at the south end of the park. There used to be an old school there. The school was demolished and the city took over, and then the pumping station was built to support our wholesale water sales. And at the time, there were some residents who felt that there was not enough public engagement about that. And so discussions were had about doing a big park improvement to incorporate the new space, as well as improve what is an older park that maybe needed some refreshing. So the second phase encompasses some of the things that have been talked about doing. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be done. The improvements that are being done now are complete for that area of the park. It would just be a question of the public engagement and the expectations that the residents might have from participating in the public engagement.
And why do we break it out into phases?
Because the scope of the project was growing, and the city, honestly, we were looking to spread out the cost over multiple years in order to better afford it.
Okay. And so this is maybe more of an esoteric question, but do we have any budget, or are we just doing what people want and then just what it costs is what we do? Like, are there any limitations on maybe, like, I know this is coming from the capital improvement fund, so is there a max there? Do we just fund the fund based on, I don't know if you know, or another city council member can answer, but like, where's our natural ceiling?
This is a whole conversation.
Okay.
But basically, the city council approves the capital fund budget as part of the budget.
Okay.
What is proposed by staff, we have been trying to work with city council to determine the best priorities, the highest priorities. We are also working with our finance and budget committee to try to develop target budgets. But some sections of our capital program are funded by lots of different funding sources. We get federal grants. We have motor fuel tax that helps fund things, water fund, that revenue from your water bill or from our wholesale water customers puts money in to make water main improvements. So transportation has a lot of options for funding that don't necessarily impact people's property tax bill, but parks and facilities do not. Okay. And so managing what that is while also trying to deal with decades of underfunding in parks and facilities has been a challenge for the last several years, and it's a conversation we'll continue with this next year budget.
Okay. I think that's it for me then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. So it's across the street from the second ward, and I know the water station, Park School used to be there. The pumping station is directly across from former Alderman Holmes' home. My question to you is, I believe I heard you say that where they want the pavilion is going to be cost for a higher cost because they want it in the middle of the park. So is that what I heard you say?
It does increase the electrical cost. We had looked at originally putting it by the south end with the pumping station because if a water feature is built there, that will be kind of a cluster of amenities. But the residents, particularly the neighbors that live by the south end, were very concerned about overbuilding that area, and they wanted it pushed further away. And there was a desire also, I would say an equal desire, to have it by the playgrounds, which are more in the center north part of the park.
Okay, so if my choice is to not have it, which I hear we say, and to move it, I feel like we would have better heard the residents in having it than moving it. And I don't know, Councilmember Burns, if you know if there's, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but do you believe there would be the preference to have the pavilion? Maybe not in the place that they wanted versus not having the pavilion at all, because that's what part of what we're talking about. And if you don't know, that's okay too. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would have to go back to the community and, or at least refer to any, notes or documentation that the consultants may have. I mean, I would also just think about it on where are the pavilions now? And at least along the North Shore Channel, all the pavilions are close to playgrounds. Mm-hmm. And that's probably for a reason. It's like when you're doing a big family event, you got the kids playing there and close. You can see them, right, know they're safe, and then you have the pavilion with the food and the party. So probably makes sense to have it close to the playground.
I get that, but
yeah,
if it's a
but that's the only
no,
thing I can
if
say.
it's a no, then it's not close to anything because it's not there. So I'm just trying to find a middle ground that accommodates Miss Alexander, because I know she had to have been very prevalent at these meetings. That community who's very active. I've been invited to you all's meetings, so trying to find that middle place that we ask for transparency and then we say, well, transparency costs too much. So I'm just trying to find that place.
Yeah, I think my question at the next level will just be what is the difference in electrical costs will be one, but then two, I would hope that we're making decisions based on what we believe is the best program as opposed to what's going to save, some minor costs, relatively minor costs in electrical. Because I think the two things that we heard from Laura make sense. One, they don't want everything to be concentrated in one area. It's going to bring more people, so the people who live closer to that area are going to be impacted. That could lead to more complaints to the city, et cetera. And then additionally, if you just look at where pavilions are already located, they're typically close to playgrounds. So for those two reasons alone, I would hope, we feel like it makes sense to continue that, installing them in that way.
Anything else, Councilmember Harris? No. Okay. You're up next, but so it sounds like what we have is a thing that we want to do and we want it to cost less than it does, and we're going to have to make a decision in terms of either limiting the scope of this or moving forward with it as a cost. So, and I think that's a discussion that will happen at council, but that's going to be a lot of decisions that need to get made up here for the next year. So, Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I lost my train of thought and I just want to finish it. I think the issue here is that we didn't give the community a budget to work in, and so they're coming to us with what they want, and we have the estimate for what it costs, and now we're saying it costs too much, and we didn't give them the opportunity to make the trade-offs during the community conversations because we didn't set a budget beforehand. And so we're all sitting here bulking at the price because it's $3 million. And if we had told them we were only willing to spend $2.5 million, they could have had these discussions. But what I also say is that we're focusing on the pavilion. The pavilion is only 1/6 of the cost, and it's actually the most important part, according to Bobby, of the whole thing. And we're ignoring the other 5/6, which is a bunch of stuff that we've gotten no information about additionally. So I think that if we do end up going through, because at this point it's kind of like a mess and it's been going on way longer than I've been here. I want my constituents to recall, I've only been here 4 weeks. But what I would like is that when we talk about what comes out of this should be a plan for what we're going to do next time, which is going into community conversations with a budget, and then also going into community conversations, letting them know that they need to have those trade-offs. That way we're more comfortable with the price tag when it comes to us. So and I'm requesting that we, as all of my co-city council members, consider how we can improve the process and make that into an ordinance or something that we work with city staff on, and then that be our plan for whatever future park developments are coming up next. I will be amenable to what you guys have had discussions about, in the past, because I'm coming in new, but going forward, I think this is kind of silly that we're at this point. And also, we're so far into the process, we're trying to have Laura go back to the contractor, but we're at the point where it's actually, we're trying to sign the contract. It feels like these discussions should have happened earlier, and I'm not exactly sure, honestly, like where we misstepped, but somewhere we should have been talking about price earlier, so we could have had these cost-cutting measures. Because it could be the case that maybe there's a garden in there or somewhere in the plan that the community actually doesn't care about. Like if they had to choose between flowers or a bunch of nice trees, they would actually axe those in exchange for the pavilion being centrally located. And I do think that the bid estimate, the one that I got, was not very detailed. I know, again, we've really pulled out the cost of the pavilion, but where are the other 6 going? I'm not quite sure. But I assume other people have had that conversation, I hope.
I do want to, you asked me a question about the cost of Independence Park. So Independence Park and Larimer Park were bid together, and they are similar together in size to this. And so that project cost about $3.4 million.
Okay.
So it's similar in size to this.
Thank you. Councilmember Nusma, followed by Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's move this along. I came up with a way to save a whopping $7,000 by going with alternate 3, which eliminates the signing, which staff has recommended we defer until a future phase of the project. So I will amend my motion to recommend approval of this project with alternate 3, reducing the price by $7,000. And a side note, directing staff to take some additional cost out of the pavilion, if at all possible.
All right, so that's a motion.
That's an amended motion.
Second? Anybody?
I need him to repeat it.
The original motion, just to open discussion, was to approve the full amount. I am amending that to add that we accept alternate 3, which saves $7,000. I'm referring to page 3 of 9 or page 196 out of 255.
So the current price already accepts that alternate, that we were recommending we remove that.
Oh, it
cost.
does. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying. I retract my amended motion.
Okay. Councilmember Kelly.
So, and just to dovetail a little bit on Councilmember Davis's comments, I'd also certainly some of this could be handled, maybe not the entire project, in-house if we had larger, more employees in greenways or the departments that would cover this. I really would like us to look at this, for example, the path, extending the path, renovating the path. I know we have the capabilities to do that. So when we do a project like this, to really look at what we absolutely need to outsource and what we can do in-house, and the cost involved in expanding our staffing to cover such projects. So we have, again, a lot of work to be done in our parks, and I just fear we're going to continue to outsource and outsource and outsource where we could save our taxpayers a lot of money, have it done in-house, and have a little more control over the project. So I really ask that that staff look at that, look at considering expanding our staffing to, again, be able to cover at least portions of some of these projects as opposed to outsourcing the entire project. Thank you.
All right. I think we are at voting time. So unless anybody else has a comment, this has been well discussed.
Okay, Councilmember Suffredin?
No.
Councilmember Davis?
Abstain.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
All right. So with a 2-1 abstention vote, this moves on to council with no recommendation. That brings us to the next item that was removed, which is item A6.
Mr. Chair, I'll move item A6, approval of contract award to SB Friedman Development Advisors for community engagement and visioning.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Any discussion? Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am concerned about the price tag of this project, certainly as it compares to the runner-up bidder, which was about half of the cost. A couple questions. I'd like to start by clarifying what all is included in this contract. And my understanding is it goes beyond just this particular project, and the intent is that some of the material created will be relevant to future discussions as well. And so just clarifying the scope of this project, and then a discussion about why staff is recommending going with this particular bidder compared to the runner-up.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, Councilmember Nusma. Good evening to the APW committee. Councilmember Davis, it's the first time you and I have interacted on this committee. I appreciate your service. I am Paul Zelmazak. I serve as the Economic Development Manager for the city. Thank you for the question. So the first part of that was what was the scope of the Emerson Jackson, what we labeled community engagement process? Well, it was threefold essentially. One, it was creating an affordable housing kind of primer or educational materials that we would create and use for outreach for the community. This is going to be the first attempt at this. We've over the years we've attempted to talk about affordable housing. It's often confused as public housing. It's not clearly defined. So we thought this was an opportunity, and by the way, this was in collaboration with Councilmember Burns, to actually create a new kind of visual data set, glossary, whatever you want to call it, that we will publish at the end of this process that we can then use for for a number of years for a series of projects that we think we have in the pipeline. So it's really important to recognize that this isn't just an engagement project for a 1 acre parcel at the corner of Emerson Jackson. It's a broader communication attempt for affordable housing that would then tie into what we're calling putting assets to work. So that kind of a separate thing. So you have your affordable housing education. Then you have the community engagement component, which actually engages the community around what they would like to see on this particular parcel. And then through that process, we would have, and that requires some market analysis, that requires an understanding of how the marketplace works. I'll use an extreme example. It's not going to be a dog park, right? Well, it could be, but I don't think that's probably the best use of the site. So the market study will help us understand what can actually be built on the site. And then once the community kind of understands that through this engagement process, and then provides feedback to the consulting team, then the architect, in this case SOM, would help design what the community is asking to have built there. And I don't mean a complete set of architectural drawings or for building permits. It would be renderings and something a little more developed than an elevation or a sketch. Those designs could then be tested in the marketplace through an RFQ process, which would result in hopefully selecting a development partner who would develop the site. So what I'm trying to stress here, that this isn't just let's do a community engagement process around a table with some sticker dots and pointing at pictures and doing like a design process where people are just picking what they think looks good. So that's how I would describe the process, different than a community engagement process.
So that was the first half of my question.
Right.
And the second half is, looking at the
pricing.
At the price, the proposal is SB Friedman at $248,000. Runner-up, which was, just a point, less than 2 points behind in the scoring, was, almost half the cost. So,
Okay.
are we paying for a Cadillac when the Chevy would get the job done?
Thank you for those Detroit auto references, near and dear to my heart. So it's really hard to analyze if you can bear with me for 5 minutes on, I know we've gone a long time here, but I really want to spend just a little bit of time on how staff analyzes projects like this. We are using essentially what is a kind of public works measurement tool, like a matrix that you kind of look at a proposal and you assign a score. And it's human beings. In this case, there were 4 human beings plus procurement people are also human beings, but there's a procurement person on the team. We analyzed the projects independently and scored them individually, and then came together and averaged them out. And if you look deeply, and we don't share the individual scores just out of courtesy for staff privacy, but the ranges of scores can vary immensely, right? So, for example, the SB Friedman scoring on pricing, one of my teammates scored it as a 10. The average was something like 18 if you included her score, or 22 if you take hers out. So little subtle changes like that will make the scores look much closer than they actually kind of intend to be. But it's also really hard to analyze a human capital or human knowledge type project using scores like robotic algorithms. It's not measuring like what's the lowest bid for 100 square feet of concrete that we're pouring. It's really about, in a lot of ways, it's about the feel and how a group engages in public or even in the interview process. That's the other part. The interview process shows up as kind of a separate scoring mechanism that isn't even baked into that original matrix. So staff was, after the interviews, trying to determine what was a really good way to score the interviews, because it revealed a lot that wasn't revealed in print. So when we had the interviews, it was clear that the SB Friedman team was in first place based on their performance, but also when we met afterwards to choose a team, we debated, how do we score those? Do we come up with a 100-point system where we give 100 points to SB Friedman for being first, and then the last place person gets 0? That didn't really make sense to us. We just thought that it was arbitrarily creating scores that we could then add to the matrix that would then make score separation, make it easier for the committee to make a decision. So what we thought we could do is say, hey, SB Friedman scored first on the printed proposal, and then they came in first place in the interview process, and therefore we thought they were the best qualified. And I will say one last thing. Literally, this could be a 30-minute conversation. I will not do that to you. A key component of this RFP was the market analysis and real estate advisory. It's in the introductory paragraph, and it's kind of baked into this analysis of what affordable housing is. And the Collabo team, with all due respect, was really solid on engagement, but they just really lacked that market analysis, real estate advisory component that I think is critical for this. We can do an engagement process, and putting that the market realities aside, I just think it gives us, it's less than, maybe it's a Chevy, maybe it's a really beat up used Chevy, but it's just not as good. And I'm not sure the SB Friedman is a Cadillac. It's more expensive than Collabo, but we're getting the market analysis that we're missing on the Collabo. I'll stop there because again, this is a lot of information, and you're at a disadvantage as a committee without knowing the process that we went through and the deep analysis we did, and the debate. I mean, we were going to bring this 2 weeks ago, but we had some internal debates about how we wanted to address the interviews and the closeness of the scores. We anticipated this.
All right, thank you. That's all for now.
Is there any further discussion? Paul, please don't walk away. Councilmember Davis.
So I've talked to city council members and staff about our strategic housing plan, where we're supposed to be developing a plan for how we address affordable housing for the entire city. And it strikes me that the process for doing that sounds like a microcosm of what you're doing here. But what I was told for our strategic housing plan is that we intended to do that in-house. And the reason that we were delaying it is because I guess staff is busy. but I think it's inconsistent that we're spending this money on one parcel of land, but we'd say that we can't do any consulting or contracting out for the broader plan. I also think it's putting the cart before the horse that we don't have that plan yet, and we're trying to do this. I think it's just strange. I don't know if that's as much a comment for you as much as it is for the other city council members. If you want to comment on it, you can. But yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we not developing an entire plan? And also, why are we comfortable hiring a consultant for this, but not other things?
Sure. And thank you for acknowledging that I probably wouldn't be able to respond to that because that I was directed to move forward with this initiative. And by the way, I do think it's good. I think if either Councilmember Burns could explain more. I don't know if Director Flax wants to talk about the housing strategy. I don't know if that was a direct question or because I'm not involved in that particular process. And I understand there are consultants.
Yeah, so this seems like more of a housing push. Why are you doing it instead of Sarah then?
That's fair. So it initially started off as one of my roles as economic development manager is to assist with the disposition of city-owned property.
Okay.
So that we acquired that parcel for development, and then I was part of the team to create the RFP process for selecting this developer, just because like that has been my role. But also at the time we were very low on housing staff.
Okay.
So moving forward, if something like this were to occur, it's most likely to be led entirely by the housing team.
Okay, so similar things would be done by the housing team.
In the future, yes, if
Okay.
it remains fully staffed.
Okay, and so that makes sense because my next question was going to be, why do we have to, like, it doesn't seem like we lack the expertise in-house to do this. So we are basically outsourcing work because we don't have enough staff or enough people to staff.
No, what I was saying is my role in the project of managing the RFP was because there wasn't housing staff to do it at the time we started this process nearly a year ago. But
Would you say the work in the RFP, we do not have the capability to do in-house?
I think it would be very difficult to run a market study and to do a deep engagement process the way that this team would do it. I mean, there's like, for example, the team that we're recommending, their expertise is communications, right? So it would be a lot of, I would guess if we had more staff and significant training, that's something that could happen, but the existing staff, I don't think has the capability of doing it. Between the grant management, the policy creation, drafting city council memos, I just don't think they have the capacity, time, or even the expertise to do it.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a longer conversation, I think that, yeah.
understood.
So, Paul,
Yes.
this is probably an unfair question, but this is giving me HDR vibes.
Yes.
Can you explain why going with someone who costs twice as much as the second bidder isn't the same issue as it was
Yeah,
for Envision?
No, that's fair. I don't think that's an unfair question at all. And in some ways, I would turn it around and say I'm very sensitive to that process that occurred. And if we can put pricing aside for a minute, I think I don't want to get myself or anybody else in trouble. I don't know if HDR was the best firm out there to do the project. That entire process is a reason why that I think we have to work harder to make sure that we do this process right. And I think we go into the team that we're recommending has the qualifications, the skill set, the team is tight. They really have worked on a lot of projects together nationally. They know what they're doing. And I think they could come in and take care of this project. And it's priced right. There isn't going to be, and I'll go on the record saying this, there isn't going to be a change order. They're not going to come in and ask for more funds. They know how to price this stuff. This other team just didn't, they're a new team. With all due respect, they're really good on the collaborative parts. Their name is Collabo. But I'm more concerned about going in that direction for that reason. I think that this project, especially if we're setting the tone for future projects, this isn't going to be a one-off. One and done. This is going to set the tone for how we're doing other projects on the west side, but also how we direct the putting assets to work team. which is something that I would also need to talk with Councilmember Davis on the side, because there's a whole element on that
Okay.
as well.
So you think the durable, ongoing benefits of going with this firm are worth it?
I think there's a bunch of lessons we're going to learn from them around communications and how we work with the community to actually show what we're talking about versus just telling them. We have, I think we lost the narrative on Envision Evanston, and it's not critiquing staff. It got out of our control when other people started drawing images and engaging in a different way. This process, I'm predicting, and it's spelled out in the scope, will provide that information. It'll be simple drawings. It will be working with the community, and they're going to see what it looks like. We're not going to tell them. They're going to actually help design it, and they're going to see it.
Okay.
It's very different than reading about it. So that's where I think it really differs.
Yeah, all right, I appreciate it. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. So, I just don't think I can support this at this price for this limited amount of land when, folks pay $750 to $1 million to get plans for an entire city. So this does feel, for community engagement and some architectural renderings. We do have architects on staff. And it's about housing. I don't know how much market study we need. We want housing. And we don't have I'd rather see the funds spent on a really solid strategic housing plan, a community affordable housing plan, land banking, land trust, all of that, rather than just this relatively large sum of money for this limited bit of land. Thank you.
All right. If there are no further comments, why don't we go ahead and vote on this? Councilmember Newsma.
I'll phrase this as a question to Councilmember Kelly. Would you be comfortable moving forward with the second place bidder at $148,000?
I would be more comfortable. I'd have to, so you would like to amend it to? I mean, I don't know what the value is. I haven't heard, I just heard, Paul speak at length about this particular firm. I don't know what kind of value we get. So I can't answer that right off the bat.
Straw poll of the other committee members. Would there be an appetite to move this forward, but with the, not Cadillac, but some version of a Chevy?
Council Ruggie, real quick. Or not real quick, take your time, as much time as you need.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council and Chair Suffredin, Alex Ruggie, Corporation Counsel. Just as far as the bid process goes, your options this evening on this are either to accept the award or reject the award that's being proposed by staff. If you're looking to have it go to the second place bidder, staff would have to bring that to the next city council meeting.
Okay. I'm going to call on Councilmember Burns.
You mean the next APW meeting or next city council meeting?
Sorry, yes, the next APW meeting.
Councilmember Burns, since this is, I believe, your initiative, I'd like to hear your take on this.
Appreciate it. Let me give just some background on this. And again, if this needs to be held over to, we have at least one new council member who has not had the benefit of hearing me talk about this before. And so if we need to take some time on this, I'm totally comfortable with that. Where this came from was Chicago had a process called Invest Southwest under Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And from what I've observed, my background is in community organizing, political consultants. It was probably one of the most impressive community engagements that I've observed and been a part of. And what they did is they front-loaded the community engagement process. And so typically in Evanston and in most places, they will find a developer first, and then that developer does some community engagement, but really what they're there to do is try to sell the community on their project. And what Invest Southwest does is the opposite. So they don't try to find a developer first. They have experts, planning experts that sit with the community over a period of time to work with the community to develop a housing proposal of their own. And then that, which is why the architect is involved, the deep community engagement, et cetera. Once that proposal is developed, then that all that information is then incorporated into another RFP process to find a developer. And what we kind of added to this is also kind of the deep education on affordable housing. If you just look at I mean, whether it's the Howe project, whether it's Church and Darrow, whether it's Jackson and Emerson, we don't seem to understand how to have a meaningful conversation about affordable housing. Most of it unravels into disagreements from opposing sides, opposition by immediate neighbors. We don't do it well. And I think there's a lack of education as to, what is affordable housing, getting on the same page about that. What is the difference between what we do in Evanston typically and Cabrini Green, which is almost always referenced in when we're talking about affordable housing? What are the differences? What went wrong there? What are we doing in Evanston? How do these projects get financed? All of that kind of education, I think, is important before you start to talk to the community about what may be possible in any particular site. I think what also just wasn't emphasized enough is that the whole investing in this is investing in potentially every single future community engagement that we do around affordable housing development. And so that is in there, it's baked into it, that the materials and everything that we learn from this process can not only be replicated, perhaps even reused in other future affordable housing community engagement processes. So I've heard a few times folks say, oh, this is just for an acre of, and this is not a lot. This is over an acre of land. It's not. It says that right in the proposal, this is to be used, what we learn here, the data, all the materials that are developed are meant to be used in future affordable housing developments. I also just want to underscore that this is TIF funded. There were 4 bids that came in higher than SB Friedman. And I think the main difference between Collabo and SB Friedman is we asked for strong community engagement, but we also asked for strong strength and technical rigor and expertise. And so if I go down just a quick list, market and financial feasibility, these are all things that SB Friedman was clear they had that wasn't necessarily in the other proposals. Real estate and economics and implementation planning, market absorption studies, financial modeling, residual land value analysis. Again, these are all things that I pulled out from the proposal that the other proposal did not have. So the last thing I'll say is when I've explained this to the community, which folks should know from Church and Darrow, we have a lively ward that comes out and engages around these issues. When I've brought up this process with community members, even those who are typically critical of how the city does things, they all grow silent. And the reason is because it's what they've been asking for. We had the folks at Washington a few meetings ago literally referencing this. If you recall, they were saying, Jackson and Emerson, y'all are doing the type of a community engagement we want here. If you recall during the Vision Evanston, one of the main criticisms of Vision Evanston is that there wasn't enough, it wasn't data formed. It didn't feel like we were making decisions based on data. That's baked into this. This is what folks are asking for. Does it come with a cost? Yes, everything does. But the point of it is for this to be reused on other projects. So it's not a one and done thing. And so, again, I've heard that 2 or 3 times. Regardless of how you vote tonight, please don't vote thinking that this is just for this project, because it clearly says it's not. It's meant to inform and be reused on every single affordable housing project in the next few years.
All right, Councilmember Kelly.
So I just wondered if we reached out to community partners for affordable housing to see, because I'm sure they would be happy to also engage with us and work with us on such a project in terms of engagement and more.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of the largest, we had 12 respondents to this, and we reached out, we put it into the marketplace. I can't answer that definitively.
I guess I meant before even putting it out to bid, if we didn't reach out to Rob Anthony and say, hey, would you work with us to help us?
That would violate city code. I couldn't do that. I mean, we'd have to bid this out appropriately, so that's why we didn't. But I could look, as a follow-up, I could find out if we had issued, if they were aware of it.
Okay.
Can I add one last thing, Chair? I want to be very clear. We work at your will, right? That's what we do. But I just want to specify the choice between Collabo and SB Friedman. It's a choice, right? You can make that. The prices are different, but it's a very different outcome, right? The Collabo team is going to do engagement, and they're going to do some renderings, and that is an approach. I don't think it gets at what we really wanted to achieve in the RFP. We really want not just engagement, but we want communications, which is much bigger than just sitting at having 5 community meetings at round tables. It's communicating with, again, the images, the data, the way that they approach how to explain how affordable housing works. Each of these teams tested their styles on us in the interviews. And this SB Friedman team did it in a way that I thought was, the whole team thought was really impactful and I think will help the community understand affordable housing better. So it's not really, it's maybe not apples to oranges, but it's more like apples and pears, like they're close, but we're really not comparing apples to apples here. The Collabo project is engagement, or their proposal is engagement. SB Friedman is market analysis, engagement, and communications.
All right, Councilmember Davis, and then we should probably vote or decide that we're not voting. But Councilmember Davis.
I just wanted to reflect on Councilmember Burns' statements and just state that I think all of those are very good, admirable goals. But I guess what worries me is that this feels like we are trying to do something indirectly through using the TIF or using this property that we should just be doing directly. So if our staff needs training on how to do better at community engagement or how to have communications of this nature, then we should just have an RFP, they can submit a proposal, and we can just pay for training directly, as opposed to using this as a learning experience that they indirectly get that does not seem like the exact point of the proposal. I think similarly, if we're trying to do public information, I can't remember the word, public education about affordable housing, that is an issue very much so in my ward when I was campaigning, where I talk to people who always assume that affordable housing means public housing, and there are confusions. And so it still feels to me that if that is our goal, I'd like it to see it citywide and us just do it directly. Like if this is a proposal, and I'll be on record and say, if anyone wants to co-sponsor a bill where we're adding into the strategic housing plan, or standalone, where we're doing a public education effort on affordable housing, yeah, I'm for it. But this indirect way of making a project into something that could potentially be limited to one area is just weird. That's it. That's my last comment.
All right. Anybody else? Or
I just want to acknowledge I am interested in the lessons that we could learn from something like this to be applied in something we're going to actually talk about in a few minutes on Main Street, the building at 801, which is not serving the community at the moment. And if we acquire it and have the conversation we're about to have, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I would like community engagement in deciding what we want to become of that project as well. And so what Councilmember Burns is talking about here is something that will have a ripple effect before too long on Main Street. So I can offer that perspective as well. I'm still not convinced that we need to go with somebody that's twice as much, though. That's where I'm at.
oh, hold on, man. Yeah, be quick, dude. We have 2 more items that we have pulled off, and we are already. Councilmember Burns, not dude. Go ahead, man.
Can I have some of your time?
Please.
The last thing I just want to say is I think also to Councilmember Davis, your point, I'm trying to strike the balance between trying to deliver affordable housing for a community that desperately needs it, right? Where it's not that this is like some impending issue. In some sense, some people felt like we have already lost the battle. So many people have been displaced from Evanston because of the cost to live here. And so I have no idea, to your earlier point, first of all, what the strategic housing scope is going to be once we're final. I'll be the new chair of the ACDC committee. That's certainly something I'm going to be, working on. If there's support to try to kind of force all these things into that process and to expedite it and to pay whatever we need to start it now and move quickly, I'm all for it. But I think this was an attempt to say, while we're trying to figure out Envision Evanston and all these other things, strategic housing, Envision Evanston, and every time I go to the community development department, they're saying they don't have the staff to do it internally, right? If they did, I would absolutely love to not have to go out for different contracts, but they're already consumed with a certain amount of work that has their time and attention. But if we're saying we support spending money to do similar work to what we're trying to do here citywide, I'm all for it. we have to get something moving. The city, the community, not just the Fifth Ward, but our entire community desperately needs housing. This was a way to try to get something going while we still try to figure out all that other stuff. And so I just wanted to say that.
That is one point of clarification, and maybe this was for Council Ruggie. If we vote this down tonight, it could come back with a different recommendation. Am I understanding correctly?
Alex is not here.
She's not here, but that's what I
Alex isn't here,
understood her to
but is
mean.
that, yeah. We don't have, so we don't have to say any magic words here tonight for that to happen.
I understood that you were to direct us, that you weren't moving forward with this tonight, and we'd have to come back with the second place proposal, with the second place.
If the chair called the vote and it failed, would that happen automatically, or do we need to make a motion or offer some formal direction to?
That I would have to ask the council.
I believe that you would have to provide direction to staff as to what you were looking to happen. So that would be done most likely through a motion.
I will make a motion that if this vote fails.
Just a second. Alex is here.
Alex is entering the room again.
Council Ruggie. Do you want to rephrase your question?
Yeah, so just procedurally, if this were to fail a vote, as you explained earlier, it could still come back with the next highest score in the scoring matrix. But what direction, if any, from this committee would need to happen would you need to make sure that happens? Do we need a motion, or can we is just something that we're all agreeing to kind of informally?
Yeah, I don't think there needs to be a formal motion. I think staff can read the room and bring it back.
Okay. Sit then.
Let's have a vote.
Councilmember Suffredin.
No.
Councilmember Davis.
No.
Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Nusma.
No.
All right. With 5 voting no, that fails. All right. We have 2 more that have been pulled. We are at 6:30. Just don't want to stifle debate, but just let's all be aware of that. Can I have a motion on item A11?
Mr. Chair, I'll move item A11, which is Resolution 53R25, seeking City Council support for the proposed changes to the ownership of the 60-unit affordable housing development to be constructed at 504 South Boulevard.
Second.
All right. Moved by Councilmember Nusma, second by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kelly.
So I think I'm the one that pulled this. I'm willing to forego discussion for this and leave this for council so we can keep moving along.
All right. Anybody else? I think that's fantastic. We're done with public comment. Council, you can make public comment. I'll make sure you get signed up. Okay. All right. So with that, let's.
We need to vote on A11.
We
This is A11.
still need to vote on A11. Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
All right. On a 5-0 vote, that passes, and that moves us along to item A12.
Mr. Chair, I move item A12, Resolution 54R25, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the purchase of 801 to 809 Main Street.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion?
Where's the quorum? Our alderman is not here. How can you have a quorum?
This is just this committee. Yeah, council.
This is not the full city council. This is the Administration and Public Works Committee. And the the city council meeting will follow APW.
And all these will come. It goes,
All right.
it can't come to the house.
So,
All
any
right.
discussion
Any
on
discussion on A12? I guess not.
Oh.
Unless you want to, you pulled it.
I'm ready to vote as long as it's going to pass.
Okay, Councilmember Suffredin?
No.
Councilmember Davis?
No.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
All right. On a vote of 2 yea, 3 nay, this fails. And that brings us to adjournment.